I never thought my life would come to this. Sitting here, telling a story that feels more like a movie than my own reality. But sometimes, truth is stranger than fiction. And sometimes, the deepest wounds don't come from strangers, they come from the ones who share your blood. My name. That's not important. What matters is my story. What matters is how everything I once loved, my family, my home, my place in this world, was torn apart by the one person I thought I could trust the most. My sister. Growing up, my sister and I were like two sides of the same coin. She was the bold one, the one who spoke her mind without fear, the one who loved the spotlight. And me, I was quieter. I preferred to listen, to learn, to study the world around me. Our father used to say that together we were unstoppable. Her fire, my patience. Her daring, my caution. We balanced each other perfectly. Or so I believed. Our father was a man of vision. He built his company from nothing, just a single idea and an iron will. What began as a small family business grew into one of the most respected firms in the city. To outsiders, it was a success story. To us, it was our inheritance, our legacy, our father's life's work. But behind the glossy magazine covers and the polished speeches, there was something else: expectation. A heavy, unspoken weight that sat between us like a shadow, because only one of us could take the reins when our father was gone. And though he never said it outright, I knew deep down that his eyes lingered on me more when he spoke about the future. My sister noticed it too. At first, it was little things: her sarcasm whenever my father praised me, the sharp edge in her tone when I offered ideas at the dinner table. She would smile, but her eyes were full of something darker, something I didn't want to believe was envy. Still, I brushed it off. We were family. Sisters fight. Sisters compete. That's normal, isn't it? At least, that's what I told myself. I wish I had listened to that quiet voice inside me sooner. The one that whispered, "Be careful," because nothing could have prepared me for what was coming. The beginning of the end came the night my father collapsed. It was late, well past midnight. I remember the phone ringing, piercing through the silence of my apartment. The hospital. Words like heart failure, critical condition, emergency surgery spun around me in a haze. I don't even remember how I got there. Only the sterile white walls, the beeping machines, and the pale face of the man who had always seemed larger than life, lying helpless in a bed. My sister was already there. She cried loudly, dramatically, clutching at the arms of doctors, demanding answers. I sat quietly beside our father, holding his hand, feeling the warmth slipping from him with every second. It was in that moment I realized how fragile everything truly was. The company, the family, the life we had built. Without him, what would become of us? But where I saw fear, my sister saw opportunity. I didn't know it then, but even as I prayed for our father's recovery, she was already planning her next move. She was already thinking of the boardroom, of the contracts, of the fortune and power that could be hers if only she could find a way to cut me out of the picture. And she found it. When I look back, I can see the signs. The late-night phone calls she would abruptly end when I entered the room. The hushed conversations with certain board members. The way she hovered around our father's lawyers like a shadow. But at the time, I didn't question it. I was too consumed with grief to focus on our father's health. For weeks, he drifted between life and death, and we clung to hope. I remember sitting by his bedside one morning, the light from the window spilling across his frail figure. He opened his eyes, just for a moment, and whispered, "Protect it. Protect the company." His hand trembled in mine. "Don't let it fall into the wrong hands." I promised him I would. I had no idea how soon that promise would be tested. The company was everything to him and everything to us. But companies aren't just steel and glass. They're people, employees, stakeholders. And when the head of a family empire weakens, vultures circle. My sister knew this. She played the part of the grieving daughter to perfection. To outsiders, she looked like the one holding the family together. She smiled at board members, offered comforting words to employees, shook hands with lawyers. She knew how to wear the mask. Me. I didn't play politics. I didn't know how to flatter or deceive. I believed that honesty and loyalty would be enough, that people would see my heart and my dedication to our Father's vision. I was wrong, because loyalty is cheap when weighed against ambition. And my sister, she knew exactly how to buy people's silence. It began slowly. A board meeting I wasn't invited to. A document I wasn't shown. A decision made without my knowledge. When I asked questions, they brushed me off. "Oh, you must have missed the memo. It wasn't important. We didn't want to bother you while your father was ill." I wanted to believe them. I wanted to believe her. But that voice inside me grew louder. Something isn't right. And then it happened. The day I walked into the office, my father's office, and found her sitting in his chair. Not visiting, not reminiscing. Sitting there like she owned it. Papers spread across the desk, her signature scrawled across contracts, her smile dripping with triumph. "Shouldn't you knock before entering, little sister?" she said. Without even looking up, I froze. My heart pounded. "What are you doing?" She leaned back, lacing her fingers behind her head, smirking. "Taking care of business. Someone has to." My stomach twisted. These are legal documents. You can't sign them." Her eyes met mine then, sharp and cold. "Oh, but I can." And I did. "You see, Father left instructions, papers, authority. I'm the rightful heir now." I laughed, bitter and shaky. "That's impossible. He hasn't even." My voice trailed off. "You forged something, didn't you?" Her smile didn't falter. "Careful, sister. Accusations like that can destroy families." And just like that, I knew. She had done it. She had faked something, documents, signatures, something powerful enough to make everyone believe her lies. And the worst part, no one seemed willing to question her. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my father's words echoing in my mind. "Protect it. Don't let it fall into the wrong hands." Tears burned my eyes. How could I fight her? She had the board, the lawyers, the documents. She had everyone convinced she was the rightful heir. But I had something she didn't, the truth, and I swore to myself, right then and there, that I would not let her win. I would find a way to expose her lies. I would gather proof. I would build my case, and when the time came, I would face her not in the shadows, not in secret, but in the one place she couldn't twist the truth, the courtroom. The days after I found her sitting in my father's chair felt like walking through a nightmare. Every corner of the company I had known since childhood seemed suddenly unfamiliar, hostile, cold. The employees who once greeted me warmly now avoided my eyes. The board members, men and women who used to praise my father's leadership, now whispered behind closed doors. And at the center of it all stood my sister, smiling that polished, perfect smile as if she hadn't just stolen everything that belonged to us. At least that's what she wanted me to believe. The truth was, she hadn't stolen everything. Not yet. She had signatures, papers, allies, but what she lacked was legitimacy. Legitimacy only came when the law, the people, and the legacy of my father stood behind her. And deep down, I knew she was terrified that one day someone would pull the mask off her face and expose the lies beneath. I intended to be that someone. It started with whispers. A secretary, too nervous to meet my eyes, slipped a file into my hand as I passed her desk. Inside, I found copies of contracts my sister had signed, contracts with her signature, not my father's. Deals that gave away shares of the company to her allies, securing their loyalty. It wasn't just greed, it was strategy. She was binding people to her, weaving a net of obligation and corruption so tight that no one would dare cut themselves free. At first, I wanted to storm into her office, throw the papers in her face, and scream, "I know what you're doing." But I stopped myself. That's what she wanted: my anger, my recklessness, my mistake. If I confronted her too soon, she would only tighten her hold and cover her tracks. No, I had to be smarter than that. I went back to my father's house that night, the home we had grown up in. It felt empty without him there, his study untouched, his chair still pushed back from the desk, as if he had only stepped away for a moment. The smell of old books and cigar smoke lingered in the air, wrapping around me like a ghost of the past. I wandered through the rooms, memories pressing in on me with every step. The kitchen, where my sister and I used to fight over who got the last piece of cake. The garden, where my father taught us to plant roses, saying they were a reminder that beauty could grow even among thorns. And the study, where he worked late into the night, poring over documents with a determination that never wavered. I ran my fingers over the bookshelves, the framed photographs, the scattered papers. I was looking for something, anything that could help me. Proof, evidence, some piece of him that could still speak the truth even when his voice was silent. And then I found it. Tucked between two thick ledgers was a folder, worn with age. Inside were letters, handwritten, signed by my father. They weren't legal documents, not in the official sense. But they were personal notes to his closest partners, letters describing his plans for the future of the company, his hopes, his fears, and in those letters, he named me, over and over again. His words made it clear I was the one he trusted to lead when he no longer could. Not my sister. Me. Tears blurred my vision as I clutched the papers to my chest. It wasn't enough to win a court case, not yet, but it was a start. Proof that I wasn't imagining things. Proof that my father saw me as his successor, and proof that my sister's claim was a lie. But while I searched for pieces of the truth, she was busy building her empire of lies. I still remember the first family dinner after our father's collapse. The long table, the silverware gleaming under the chandelier, the empty seat at the head of the table where he should have been. It felt wrong, sitting there without him, like a play missing its lead actor. My sister sat at the far end, in his seat. She didn't ask for permission. She didn't hesitate. She simply sat down, and everyone else accepted it. I watched her carefully as she raised her glass. "To father," she said, her voice dripping with false sorrow. "He built this empire with his bare hands, and though he is too weak to lead now, I promise I will carry his legacy with honor." Around the table, heads nodded. Glasses clinked. Smiles of approval spread, but I couldn't drink. I couldn't smile. My stomach churned as I looked around the table, realizing how many people she had already won over. Uncles, aunts, cousins, relatives who should have stood by me, but instead were seduced by her promises of wealth and influence. Then her eyes met mine, And in that moment, I saw it just for a flicker, the triumph hidden beneath her mask of grief. She was daring me to challenge her, but I didn't. Not yet, because I had learned something that night. She was playing a game of masks. And if I wanted to survive, I had to wear one too. I started keeping a journal. Every whisper I heard, every inconsistency I noticed, every suspicious document I found, I wrote it all down. I became my own detective, piecing together the puzzle of her deception. I discovered that she had quietly replaced some of my father's trusted advisors with her own allies. She had accidentally lost files that contradicted her claims. And most of all, she had convinced the board that my father had given her full authority before his illness. But here's the thing, I knew my father. He was meticulous. Every decision, every signature, every document, he left a trail. He didn't trust memory or assumption. And if my sister truly had the legal authority she claimed, there would be a record somewhere. So I searched his home, his office, his files. I searched the archives at the company. And each time I came up empty-handed, my determination grew. Because the absence of proof wasn't proof of her claim, it was proof of her forgery. She had erased the evidence. But in doing so, she left behind shadows, and shadows can still tell a story. The first real crack appeared one afternoon when I met with one of my father's oldest friends, Mr. Raymond. He had been with the company since the beginning, a man of integrity who had always spoken highly of my father's vision. We sat in his study, the air heavy with dust and history. He poured me a cup of tea, his hands trembling slightly with age. I don't know how much longer I'll be part of all this, he said, his voice weary. But I want you to know something, my dear. Your father, he trusted you. He told me himself, just weeks before his illness. He said you were ready, that he was proud. My throat tightened. Then why is everyone acting like she's the heir? He sighed, shaking his head. Because she's clever and ruthless. She made promises she never intends to keep. She has people convinced she's their best chance at fortune. But fortune built on lies never lasts. I leaned forward. Then help me. Help me prove it. He hesitated, then nodded. I can't do much. But there's something you should know. The last time your father spoke to me, he mentioned updating his will. He said he was making arrangements to ensure the company went to the right hands. But he never told me if it was finalized. If she faked documents. Perhaps she intercepted the real ones. My heart raced. A missing will. That was it. That was the key. If I could find it, I could prove everything. But if I couldn't, then her lies would become truth. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I realized the path ahead of me. I couldn't rely on family. They had chosen sides. I couldn't rely on the board. They were too afraid of losing their power. I couldn't even rely on the lawyers. They were already in her pocket. No. If I was going to bring her down, I had to rely on myself, on my wits, my patience, my determination, and maybe, just maybe, on a few people who still remembered who my father really was and what he truly wanted. The war had begun. And though she thought she had already won, she hadn't seen the full extent of what I was capable of. Because I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for him. For the truth. For the legacy that should never have been tainted by lies. And I swore, as I drifted into a restless sleep, that no matter what it took, I would not stop until justice was mine. I woke up the next morning with a sense of purpose. For weeks, I had drifted in a fog of grief and confusion, stumbling from one betrayal to the next. But now I had a direction. A missing will. A clue. Something tangible to chase. The first step was the lawyers. My father had always worked with a trusted firm, one that had handled his contracts and estates for decades. If he had indeed drafted a new will, they would know about it. And if my sister had intercepted it, I needed to see what remained. As or I scheduled a meeting. The law office was housed in a tall, sterile building downtown, the kind of place that smelled of ink and ambition. The receptionist greeted me politely, though her eyes darted nervously toward the closed door of the senior partner's office. When I stepped inside, Mr. Collins, the lawyer who had worked with my father for years, rose stiffly from behind his desk. He was older now, his once dark hair streaked with silver, but his eyes were as sharp as ever. "My dear," he said, forcing a smile. "It's been too long." I sat, my fingers clasped tightly together. "I'll get straight to the point, Mr. Collins. My father, before his illness, he mentioned making changes to his will. Do you know anything about it?" His smile faltered. He cleared his throat. "Well, yes. He came to see me, in fact. We discussed some adjustments. He wanted to ensure the company remained in the right hands. But before we could finalize it, well, his condition worsened." My heart sank. So it was never finished. He hesitated. And in that pause, I saw the truth flicker across his face. "It was finished," I whispered. "Wasn't it?" His eyes darted to the door. "Your sister has been very insistent," he said at last, his voice low. "She came here shortly after your father was hospitalized. She demanded to see the documents. She claimed she had authority. I had no choice but to comply." Anger surged through me. "She took them." He nodded once, reluctantly. "And not just took them. She altered them. Forged signatures. The copy on file is not the one your father signed." I leaned forward, my voice shaking. "Can you prove it?" He hesitated again. "Perhaps. But understand, if I testify against her, my career is finished. She has influence, powerful allies. If I cross her, I will be ruined." I swallowed hard. This was the trap she had built, one of fear and silence. But fear could be broken. Silence could be shattered. "Then give me something," I said firmly. "Anything. A draft. A note. His handwriting. Something she couldn't touch." After a long pause, he opened a drawer and pulled out a small folder. Inside was a single sheet of paper, my father's handwriting, dated and signed, but without the final legal formatting. A draft of the will. A draft naming me as successor. It wasn't enough to win a legal battle. But it was enough to prove one thing: my sister was lying. And now I had my first weapon. But weapons are useless without strategy. That evening, I sat in my apartment surrounded by papers: my journal, my father's letters, the draft will. The evidence was fragile, incomplete. If I presented it now, she would tear it apart, call it fabricated, accuse me of desperation. No. I had to be patient. I had to wait until the moment was right. But in the meantime, I couldn't let her believe I was weak. She was growing bolder by the day, strutting through the company like a queen on her throne, her allies trailing behind her like loyal courtiers. She thought I was beaten, and that was her mistake. The first confrontation came sooner than I expected. It was during a board meeting. I hadn't been invited, of course, but I showed up anyway. Walking into the sleek glass conference room with my head held high, the air went still as I entered. Conversations cut short, eyes darted nervously, and at the head of the table, my sister smiled that poisonous smile. Well, she drawled. "Look, who decided to join us. To what do we owe the pleasure?" I ignored her and took a seat. I'm a shareholder and a member of this family. I have every right to be here. The board members shifted uncomfortably, glancing at one another. My sister leaned forward, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Of course, dear. But these meetings can be so complicated. I'd hate for you to feel out of place. I'll manage, I said, meeting her gaze. She narrowed her eyes, but she didn't push further. Instead, she turned to the board and began presenting her latest initiatives, deals, and projects that funneled resources into the hands of her allies. Her voice was confident, her smile dazzling, but all I could see were the cracks in her performance. Because now I knew the truth. And knowing gave me strength. When she finished, I spoke. Impressive presentation. But I have a question. These new contracts, why do they bear your signature, and not father's? A ripple of discomfort passed through the room. My sister's smile didn't falter, but her eyes hardened. Because father gave me authority. Surely you knew that. I leaned back in my chair, my lips curving into a small smile of my own. Oh, I know what you claim. But claims and proof are not the same thing. And one day soon, this board will demand proof. For the first time, I saw it, the flicker of fear in her eyes. It was gone in an instant, replaced by arrogance, but I had seen it, and it gave me hope. After the meeting, she cornered me in the hallway. Her smile was gone now, her voice low and venomous. You're playing a dangerous game, she hissed. So are you, I replied, my voice steady. Her eyes narrowed. You think you can fight me? You've always been soft, always hiding in father's shadow. Do you really believe you can outsmart me? I leaned closer, my words a whisper meant only for her. I don't have to outsmart you. I just have to expose you. For a moment, her mask slipped completely. Rage twisted her features, raw and unguarded. And then, just as quickly, it was gone. She laughed lightly, patting my shoulder as if we were sharing a joke. Careful, sister, she murmured. You might just find yourself destroyed before you even begin. She walked away, her heels clicking against the marble floor, each step echoing like a threat. But I didn't feel destroyed. I felt alive. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt the thrill of battle. Because now, the lines had been drawn. She knew I was coming for her. And I knew she was afraid. That night, as I added the draft will to my growing collection of evidence, I realized something important. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about every person she had manipulated, every employee she had betrayed, every legacy she had tarnished with her greed. My fight wasn't only for my father's honor, it was for the soul of the company itself. And though I stood alone, I wasn't afraid, because truth, once uncovered, is a weapon no lie can withstand, and I was ready to use it. After that boardroom meeting, I could feel the atmosphere around me change. My sister still strutted through the halls of the company as if she owned them, but there was a tension in her smile now, a stiffness in the way her eyes followed me whenever I passed. She knew I was searching. She knew I wouldn't back down. And though she tried to mask it, I could sense her fear growing, like a predator realizing the prey had teeth of its own. But fear makes dangerous enemies. I became more careful. Every file I copied, every conversation I overheard, every clue I collected, I kept it hidden, locked away where she could never find it. I had learned long ago that when people feel threatened, they strike. And my sister, she had no limits when it came to protecting her illusion of power. Still, for all her cunning, she made one mistake. She underestimated the people who still remembered my father for who he truly was. It happened one late afternoon, as I was leaving the office. The hallways were quiet, most employees already gone for the day. As I walked toward the elevators, a voice called softly behind me, "Miss." "Wait." I turned. It was Clara, one of my father's longest-serving assistants. She was older now, her hair streaked with gray, her posture slightly hunched from years of long hours. But her eyes sharp, observant, were as alive as ever. She glanced nervously around before approaching me. "I shouldn't be seen talking to you," she whispered. "But I can't stand by any longer." My heart raced. "What do you mean?" Her voice trembled, but her resolve was clear. "I was there the day your sister came to the office with those papers. The ones she claims your father signed. I saw them. I saw her slip them out of her bag before she handed them to Mr. Collins. And I know," her voice dropped lower, "I know they weren't real." A chill ran down my spine. "Your shoe." Clara nodded firmly. "Your father's signature." I typed enough letters for him to know it by heart. What she showed them wasn't his. Not exactly. It looked close, but not close enough. I wanted to speak up, but she threatened me. Said if I breathed a word, I'd lose everything. Anger flared in my chest, hot and sharp. My sister had silenced people with fear. But Clara's courage proved that not everyone could be bought or intimidated. I placed my hand gently over hers. "Thank you. You don't know how much this means." She gripped my fingers tightly. "Be careful. She's watching you. She knows you're looking for proof. And if she thinks you're close to finding it." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. That night, I couldn't sleep. Clara's warning echoed in my mind. My sister wasn't just ambitious, she was desperate. And desperation makes people dangerous. But Clara had given me hope. Witness testimony? A loyal ally. Someone who could confirm what I already suspected, that the documents were forged. Still, I needed more. Words alone wouldn't be enough to win in court. I needed undeniable proof. Hard evidence. Something that couldn't be twisted or dismissed. As I doubled down, I began spending more time at my father's house, combing through his papers, searching for anything she might have overlooked. Late nights stretched into early mornings as I pored over ledgers, contracts, correspondence. It was exhausting work, but slowly, patterns began to emerge. My sister had been sloppy in her haste to erase the past. Documents were missing, yes, but in their absence, gaps appeared. Gaps that told their own story. For example, my father had a habit of initialing every page of an important document, not just the final signature. It was his way of ensuring nothing could be added or removed later. But the contracts my sister presented, they had only his signature at the bottom, no initials, a small detail perhaps. But in court, small details matter. I noted it carefully in my journal, alongside Clara's testimony and the draft will from Mr. Collins. Piece by piece, the puzzle was coming together. Of course, secrets never stay buried forever. It was a week later when she confronted me again. This time, it wasn't in the hallway or behind closed doors. This time, it was in front of the entire family. We had gathered at the estate for dinner, a forced tradition meant to keep appearances. The long dining table was crowded with relatives, their laughter brittle, their smiles strained. At their head sat my sister, basking in her stolen authority, while I sat quietly at the far end, ignored almost. Halfway through the meal, she set down her glass with a deliberate clink. "Dear sister," she said loudly, her voice cutting through the chatter, "I hear you've been busy lately, spending quite a lot of time at father's house, digging through old papers. Tell me, What is it you hope to find? The table fell silent. All eyes turned to me. My pulse quickened, but I forced myself to smile calmly. Just memories. Father's handwriting, his notes. They comfort me. Her lips curved into a smirk. Memories? Or evidence? A murmur rippled through the room. I leaned back, meeting her gaze steadily. Funny you should mention evidence. Sounds like you're worried about something I might find. Her smirk faltered for just a second. Then she laughed, shaking her head. Paranoid as ever. But I suppose grief does strange things to people. The conversation shifted, but the tension remained. Beneath the polite laughter and clinking silverware, everyone knew the truth. This wasn't dinner. This was a battlefield, and neither of us intended to back down. Later that night, as I left the estate, I felt eyes on me. Not just hers, others. Cousins, uncles, distant relatives who had once embraced me now watched with suspicion, waiting to see which sister would prevail. It struck me then. This wasn't just about documents or signatures. This was about loyalty, about who people believed in, about power, and though my sister thought she had already secured it, I could sense the shift. Some were beginning to doubt her, to wonder if the perfect mask she wore was hiding something rotten beneath. All I had to do was give them proof. That proof came sooner than I expected. One evening, while sorting through boxes in my father's study, I found a small, locked drawer in his desk. I had tried it before with no success, but this time, I noticed something, a tiny key taped to the underside of a drawer above it. Clever, father. Always one step ahead. I unlocked it, my hands trembling. Inside were several envelopes, sealed and neatly labeled. Among them was one marked with my name. With shaking fingers, I tore it open. Inside was a letter, written in his unmistakable handwriting. My dearest daughter, if you are reading this, it means my health has failed me sooner than I expected. I know you may face challenges after I am gone, for power breeds greed, even within families. But know this, you are the one I trust. You are the one I believe in. I have done what I can to ensure the company will pass to you, but if those efforts are obstructed, never lose faith. The truth has a way of surfacing. Trust yourself. Protect our legacy. Tears blurred my vision as I read the words over and over again. This was it. This was what I needed, not just legally, but emotionally. Proof that I wasn't fighting a phantom battle. Proof that he believed in me. And then, beneath the letter, I found something even more valuable. A copy of a contract. The original, signed and initialed by him. The same contract my sister had presented to the board, but in her version, the initials were missing. Here it was. The smoking gun. The next morning, I walked into the office with renewed strength. For the first time in weeks, I felt the weight lift slightly from my shoulders. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining things. I had proof, but proof is dangerous, and as I slipped the document into my bag, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Because if I had found it, then she would know her time was running out, and I had no doubt she would strike back. I woke up the next morning with my father's letter tucked safely beneath my pillow. I had read it so many times the words were already burned into my mind. You are the one I trust. Protect our legacy. His voice echoed in every corner of my soul. For weeks, I had walked this fight alone, clinging to scraps of suspicion and whispers of truth. But now I had his words, his trust, his proof, and proof changes everything. I knew I couldn't keep the discovery to myself for long. The letter and the contract were weapons, but weapons are useless if no one sees them. Still, I had to be careful. One misstep, and my sister would find a way to twist it all back on me. I confided in only one person, Clara. We met in a quiet cafe far from the office, where no familiar faces would lurk. She slid into the booth across from me, her hands trembling as she wrapped them around her coffee cup. "You said you found something?" she whispered. I nodded, sliding the copy of the original contract across the table. She scanned it quickly, her eyes widening. This is it. This proves she forged the other one. And this. I pulled the letter from my bag, my heart racing as I handed it to her. Proves father trusted me, not her. Clara's lips parted slightly as she read. Then, slowly, she lifted her gaze to mine. "Do you know what this means?" I exhaled shakily. "It means we can finally fight her. Not in whispers. Not in shadows. In court." Her fingers tightened around the papers. "But she won't let this slide. If she realizes you have these, she'll come for you harder than ever." I nodded. "Then let her. Because now I'm ready." I wish I could say that courage made me untouchable. But the truth is, courage paints a target. Word spread faster than I anticipated. By the end of the week, whispers reached my cousins, uncles, even board members. They began looking at me differently, not with pity, but with something sharper: suspicion, curiosity, hope, and my sister. She noticed it happened during another board meeting. She walked in draped in confidence, her tailored suit a perfect shield. But I caught the flicker in her eyes when she saw me seated at the table, calm and unshaken. She cleared her throat. "Before we begin, I'd like to address a matter." The room quieted. "It has come to my attention," she continued, her gaze locking on me like a blade, "that some individuals here have been entertaining ridiculous rumors. That my authority, my rightful claim to this company, is somehow questionable." Her words dripped with venom. "Let me be clear, there is no question. My father entrusted this company to me. Any suggestion otherwise is slander. Lies spread by those who cannot accept reality." Her eyes bore into mine. I didn't flinch. Instead, I leaned forward slightly, resting my hands on the table. "Funny. If it's all lies, then you have nothing to fear from the truth, do you?" A ripple of tension spread through the boardroom. Some of the men shifted uncomfortably. Others raised their brows, curious. She laughed, brittle and sharp. "Truth, or your delusions?" I smiled faintly. "We'll see." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. For the first time, she didn't have the last word. That night, the storm hit. I returned home to find my apartment ransacked. Papers scattered across the floor. Drawers yanked open. My safe cracked, but the letter and contract were untouched. Because I hadn't kept them here. I had known better. Still, the violation rattled me. My sister wasn't playing games anymore. She was scared. And fear makes people reckless. The following day, Clara came to me with panic in her eyes. "She knows," she whispered as soon as we were alone. "She knows you have something. People are saying she's been asking questions, pressuring staff, even threatening them." I swallowed hard. "Then it's time." "Time for what?" I met her gaze steadily. "To take her to court." But before I could even file the papers, betrayal struck from a place I didn't expect. It was during a family gathering, one of those orchestrated dinners where everyone pretends to care while secretly measuring what they can gain. I sat quietly, sipping my wine, until my cousin James leaned across the table. "So," he said loudly, smirking, "word is you've been playing detective, digging up evidence, planning some big showdown." The room went silent. All eyes turned to me. My sister's smirk widened. "Yes, dear sister. Do tell. What proof could you possibly have?" My pulse thundered. I hadn't told James. I hadn't told anyone except Clara. Which meant someone had betrayed me. I forced a calm smile. "If I were planning something, you'd be the last to know." Laughter rippled around the table, but beneath it, I could see her eyes narrowing. She knew now. She knew. That night, I confronted Clara. "Did you tell anyone?" My voice shook more than I wanted it to. Her eyes filled with tears. "I swear, I didn't. I would never." I searched her face. And though doubt gnawed at me, I believed her. She had too much to lose and too much heart to betray me, which meant someone else had overheard. Someone had been listening. Someone was feeding her information, and suddenly the walls of family closed in tighter than ever. I realized then, this wasn't just me against my sister. This was me against a system built on secrets, alliances, and greed. Half of them wanted her to win because she promised power. The other half wanted me to lose because I threatened the order they'd grown comfortable with. But none of them expected me to stand. None of them expected me to fight. The next morning, I walked into my lawyer's office with the letter and the contract. "I'm ready," I told him. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Then let's file. But be prepared once this goes public. She'll come after you with everything she has. Money, influence, lies." I squared my shoulders. "Let her. Because this time, I'm not backing down." That night, as I sat by my window overlooking the city, I felt a calm settle over me. The storm was coming. The courtroom would be our battlefield, but I was no longer afraid, because I had the truth. Because I had my father's words. Because I had finally embraced the fight, and soon, very soon, everyone would see who truly deserved the crown. Filing the case was like lighting a match in a room soaked with gasoline. One spark and everything caught fire. The news spread faster than even I imagined. One morning, I walked into the office and felt the stares. Whispers trailed me like shadows. My sister's name and mine floated in hushed conversations, darting between lips like poisoned arrows. By noon, it was everywhere. The family feud. The lawsuit. Two sisters, locked in a battle for the company that bore our father's name. Exactly what she didn't want. The facade of unity shattered, but my sister was nothing if not cunning. She struck back. Not with silence, but with a storm. The next day, the newspapers printed headlines: "Unstable daughter challenges sister's rightful inheritance." Articles described me as erratic, grieving, unfit to lead. Anonymous sources painted me as a bitter, jealous woman who couldn't accept reality. I knew where it came from. I knew whose money lined those pockets, and worse, she used our relatives against me. Cousins who once hugged me now gave interviews, calling her the responsible one, praising her leadership, dismissing me as a dreamer. Watching it unfold felt like being erased piece by piece. My reputation shredded until there was nothing left but the image you wanted the world to see. But she forgot one thing. I didn't care about the image. I cared about the truth. My lawyer, Mr. Hayden, was a quiet man with a sharp mind. He laid out the battlefield with precision. "We need 3 pillars," he said, adjusting his glasses as we sat across from one another in his book-lined office. "The documents, the witness, and your credibility." He tapped each point with his pen. "The documents, we have your father's letter and the original contract. That's strong. The witness we have, Clara. She can testify to what she saw. But your credibility. His eyes met mine. That's where she'll attack hardest. I nodded. She already has. Then we fight back. Not with anger. With composure. Every time she tries to paint you as unstable, we show calm. Every time she lies, we show facts. It sounded simple. It felt impossible. But I had no choice. Clara, bless her heart, stood firm despite the fear. She can ruin me, she whispered one evening, when we met in the empty office lobby after hours. But I can't stay quiet. I watched her forge those papers. I won't let your father's name be destroyed. Her bravery gave me strength. Yet I worried for her. My sister wouldn't hesitate to silence anyone who stood in her way. And sure enough, a few days later, Clara came to me shaken. She sent someone to threaten me, she confessed. Said if I testify, I'll regret it. That my family will regret it. My blood boiled. Then she's scared. Clara swallowed hard. But what if she makes good on it? I squeezed her hand. Then she'll expose herself even more. And I'll protect you. I swear it. The weeks blurred into a whirlwind of depositions, paperwork and sleepless nights. But amid the chaos, something unexpected happened. One morning, Mr. Hayden called me with urgency in his voice. There's been a development. Someone reached out. Someone who claims to have information. Who? I asked, my stomach tightening. Your father's accountant. I froze. The accountant had worked with my father for years, a quiet man who rarely spoke outside numbers and ledgers. I hadn't seen him at any of the family gatherings since my sister took over. He says he was pressured. Hayden explained that your sister asked him to adjust certain records before presenting them to the board. He kept copies hidden. My breath caught. Do you believe him? Hayden's voice lowered. If his documents check out, this could be the nail in her coffin. The night before our first court appearance, I sat alone in my apartment, staring out at the city lights. My nerves twisted like wires. What if the judge didn't believe me? What if Clara backed out? What if my sister's smear campaign had already poisoned every mind against me? Then I unfolded my father's letter once more. Never lose faith. The truth has a way of surfacing. I pressed the paper to my chest, letting his words steady me. This wasn't just my fight. This was his legacy. And tomorrow, I would step into that courtroom carrying not just documents, but his voice, his trust, his belief in me. When dawn broke, I walked into the courthouse flanked by Hayden and Clara. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted my name, microphones shoved toward my face. Do you have evidence? Are you challenging your father's will? Is it true you're unstable, unfit to lead? I said nothing. I walked straight ahead, shoulders square, heart pounding. And across the courtyard, my sister arrived. Draped in elegance, her smile sharp as glass. She basked in the cameras. She thrived on attention. She believed the world was hers to command. But for the first time, I saw the crack. The tightness around her mouth. The flicker in her eyes. She was afraid. Because she knew once the truth entered that courtroom, her crown might shatter. The courthouse smelled of old wood and cold marble. The kind of place where secrets were forced into the light whether they liked it or not. As I stepped inside, I felt the weight of generations pressing down on me. My father had built everything from nothing, brick by brick, deal by deal, and now here I was, dragging our family name into a courtroom. But I wasn't the one who ruined the legacy. She was. The gallery was full reporters, relatives, board members, even employees who had slipped away from work to witness history unfold. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but the eyes of the world were still on us. She sat across from me at the defendant's table, immaculate as always. Her hair perfectly styled, her suit pristine, her smile soft enough to charm anyone who didn't know the venom behind it. To the world, she looked like the responsible one, the leader, the rightful heir. But I knew better. And soon, everyone else would too. The judge entered, and the trial began. My lawyer, Mr. Hayden, opened with calm precision. He laid out the case. How my sister had produced questionable documents. How there were irregularities in the signatures. How witnesses had come forward to challenge the validity. She did not inherit this company through trust or merit, he said firmly, his voice echoing through the courtroom. She inherited it through fraud. And today, we will prove it. Her attorney rose next, smooth and theatrical. He painted me as unstable, bitter, a grieving daughter lashing out at her sister. She has no evidence, he sneered. Only accusations born of jealousy. My client is the rightful heir, entrusted by her father. This case is nothing more than an act of desperation. I clenched my fists under the table, nails biting into my palms. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the truth. The first witness called was Clara. She walked nervously to the stand, her hands trembling slightly as she was sworn in. But when Hayden asked her to speak, her voice grew steadier. I was there the day the papers were presented, she said. I saw her take them from her bag before handing them over. They were not my employer's. They were not signed in front of anyone. And I have worked for him long enough to know his handwriting. What she showed them was not his signature. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Her attorney leapt to his feet. Objection. Pure speculation. The judge raised a hand. Overruled. The witness may continue. Clara lifted her chin, her voice gaining strength. I was threatened to stay quiet. But I won't stay quiet anymore. Mr. Carter trusted his legacy to someone honest. And this, she turned to look directly at my sister, was not honesty. The silence that followed was heavy, electric. For the first time, my sister's mask slipped, just slightly. Her jaw tightening, but she struck back fast. During cross-examination, her attorney sliced at Clara's testimony like a knife. Isn't it true, he asked coldly, that you were passed over for a promotion years ago? That you had grievances against my client's family? Clara faltered. That has nothing to do with it. Has everything to do with it, he snapped. You resent her. And now you want revenge. Isn't that the real reason you're here? I felt my stomach twist. But then Clara straightened. I am here because your client lied. Because she stole. That is the only reason. The courtroom buzzed again. I exhaled, pride swelling in my chest. She hadn't broken. Then it was my turn. I took the stand, my heart pounding so hard I thought the whole room could hear it. Hayden asked gentle questions first. About my father, about our relationship, about the letter he left me. When he held it up for the court to see, the air seemed to shift. This is his handwriting, I said firmly. I would recognize it anywhere. In this letter, he makes it clear who he trusted, who he believed should protect the company. Then came the contract. This Hayden displayed the copy, with initials on every page, is the original contract. Every page signed, every page initialed. That was my father's habit. And yet the version she presented to the board, he let the silence stretch. No initials. Only one signature. Forged. The murmurs rose louder now, people shifting in their seats. Her mask cracked again. Cross-examination was brutal. Her attorney paced in front of me like a predator. You expect us to believe this letter wasn't fabricated? that you conveniently found it locked away just when you needed it most. I met his gaze steadily. I don't expect you to believe anything. The handwriting speaks for itself, and your so-called contract copy. He sneered. Easily planted. Easily faked. Then why is it initialed on every page, the exact habit my father followed all his life? A detail only someone close to him would know. He froze for half a second. Long enough for me to know I'd struck. The judge's gavel banged. The witness will only answer questions, not ask them, but the damage was done. Just when I thought the day had reached its peak. Hayden called the accountant to the stand. The quiet man walked forward, clutching a folder to his chest. His hands shook as he was sworn in. Tell us what you discovered, Hayden urged. The accountant's voice was soft, almost trembling. But every word landed like a hammer. I was asked by her. He pointed at my sister to alter company ledgers before they were presented, to hide certain discrepancies. She said it was necessary, that it was her father's wish. But I knew it wasn't true. So I kept the originals. Right, he opened the folder. Page after page of untouched records, numbers intact, untouched by deceit. The courtroom exploded. Reporters scribbled furiously. Relatives whispered. The judge banged his gavel to restore order. But in that chaos, I saw her face. Pale, rigid, her perfect mask finally shattering. Because now, it wasn't just my word. It wasn't just Clara's single quotes s.it was proof.as. The session adjourned. I walked out of the courtroom with Clara at my side, the accountant trailing nervously behind. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashed, questions flew. Do you think you've won? Will she face charges? Is this the end of her reign? I didn't answer. I simply lifted my chin, the weight on my shoulders lighter than it had been in months, because for the first time, the truth wasn't just mine to carry. It belonged to the world, and she knew it. The next morning, the courthouse was buzzing louder than ever. Reporters crowded the steps, microphones reaching like spears toward anyone even loosely connected to our family name. Headlines screamed from every newspaper. Forgery allegations, Rock Carter legacy. Daughter vs. daughter. Who really owns the empire? But inside, the air was heavier, tighter. Like everyone knew today would be different. Today, she would strike back. She walked into the courtroom like nothing had happened. Head high, lips curved in that soft, poisonous smile she wore so well. It infuriated me how she could still look untouchable after everything, but she wasn't untouchable. Not anymore. Her lawyer stood tall, voice booming with renewed confidence. Your Honor, my client has been unfairly accused, paraded in front of this court as if she were a criminal. But the truth is far simpler. And today, we will show you the real story. I braced myself. The first move was brutal. They called me a liar. Not just in words, but in evidence they had carefully prepared. The lawyer held up photocopies, faded, grainy, but carrying my father's handwriting. These, he declared, are additional letters. Letters she conveniently forgot to bring. Letters where her father clearly expressed his trust in my client, his elder daughter, to let the company. Gasps rose through the gallery. My heart lurched. Those letters. They looked real. Too real. I wanted to shout that they were fakes. That they were just another layer of her lies. But the judge silenced the outburst rising inside me. Then she took the stand. Her voice dripped with calculated grief. I never wanted to come to this courtroom. I never wanted to fight my own sister. But I have no choice. She's trying to take from me what our father entrusted. He told me, countless times, that I was his choice. That she glanced at me with wide, pitiful eyes was too fragile, too emotional to handle the weight of the company. The courtroom buzzed again. I felt heat rise in my chest. Fragile? Emotional. That was the story she was weaving now. And the accountant. She continued, her voice cracking like a broken daughter's. He's lying. He was dismissed from our company years ago for negligence. And Clara? She's bitter, resentful. My sister has gathered disgruntled employees and turned them against me. The lawyer nodded approvingly, pacing the floor. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a case about fraud. This is a case about envy. About a younger sister who cannot accept that she wasn't chosen. I wanted to scream, to tear apart every word. But my lawyer placed a hand on my arm, reminding me to stay calm, because the storm wasn't over yet. Her lawyer leaned in close to the judge. And we have one more piece of evidence. The doors at the back opened, and a new figure entered, a family friend. Someone who had known my father for decades. Mr. Raymond. My stomach dropped. He had always favored her, always spoken highly of her composure, her leadership. If he sided with her here, it could unravel everything. On the stand, his words cut deep. Yes, I remember your father saying he wanted her to lead, he testified, nodding toward my sister. He always admired her focus, her discipline. He worried the younger one wasn't ready. It felt like a knife in my chest. The gallery whispered furiously, shifting toward her side again. The momentum was slipping, but then Hayden stood, calm as stone. Mr. Raymond, he said evenly, would you read this letter aloud? He handed over the very letter my father had left me. Raymond adjusted his glasses, squinting at the words. His voice wavered as he read, to my youngest, if you're reading this, it means I trusted you enough to carry what matters most. He faltered. His eyes darted to my sister, then back to the letter. Hayden's voice was sharp. So, sir, would you still say my client was not ready when these are your friend's own words? The silence was suffocating. Raymond shifted uncomfortably. I cannot explain this. But I know what he said to me. The judge leaned forward. We are not here to weigh hearsay against written evidence. We are here to weigh proof. And just like that, the damage of his testimony lessened. But she wasn't done. Her lawyer stood again, his face fierce. If written proof is what matters, then let us show you our proof. From his briefcase, he withdrew another document. This one took me to my core. It was a will that clearly stated the company was to pass entirely to her. The courtroom erupted in chaos. The judge banged his gavel. Reporters nearly fell over themselves scribbling notes. And me, my body went cold, because if that will was real, everything I had built, every truth I had fought to bring to light would collapse in an instant. I looked at her. And for the first time since this trial began, she smirked. Not the soft mask she had worn so carefully. A smirk of triumph. She had saved her deadliest weapon for last. And now, it was out in the open. The air in the courtroom was suffocating. That was sat on the evidence table, like a loaded gun. Every pair of eyes was locked on it. Every reporter scribbling wildly. Every relative whispering in shock. My sister looked radiant, triumphant, as if the trial was already over. I could almost hear her thoughts. Checkmate. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Hayden rose slowly, calm as ever. His voice was measured, deliberate, slicing through the courtroom's noise. Your Honor, this will raise several serious questions. We request immediate authentication by a handwriting expert and forensic analyst. The judge nodded. Proceed. Her attorney smirked. By all means. Let the experts confirm what we already know. The expert was called forward. A silver-haired man with years of gravitas behind him. He adjusted his glasses, examining the document with a magnifying lens, comparing it to older samples of my father's handwriting. Minutes stretched like hours. My heart thundered in my chest. Finally, the expert cleared his throat. The signature is remarkably similar. Almost too similar. In fact, when overlaid with a prior contract, it matches stroke for stroke. Which suggests he looked up. This was not signed naturally. It was traced. The gallery gasped. My sister's smirk faltered. Her attorney jumped up instantly. Objection. Pure speculation. The judge's gavel cracked. Overruled. The witness may continue. The expert nodded. Additionally, the ink used is chemically inconsistent with the time period when the will was supposedly signed. It's modern. Manufactured years later. The room exploded into murmurs. Reporters whispered furiously, pens flying across paper. The judge leaned forward, eyes sharp. Are you saying this will is fraudulent? The expert didn't hesitate. Yes. This will is a forgery. My sister's face drained of color, but she wasn't finished fighting. Her voice cut through the chaos, high and sharp. No. That's impossible. My father gave me this himself. He wanted me to have everything, he said so. Her attorney tried to calm her, placing a hand on her arm, but she shook him off violently. And then, in her rage, she said too much. I did what I had to do. I couldn't let her ruin the company the way she ruins everything else. The courtroom froze. Every word hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. She realized too late what she had admitted. Hayden rose again, seizing the moment. Your Honor, you've just heard it yourself. Not only is the will forged, but my client's sister has all but confessed to manipulating the truth for her own gain. The judge's voice was stern, echoing through the chamber. This court does not tolerate deceit. Produce the original will if it exists or face the consequences. Her attorney stammered, papers scattering across his desk. Your Honor, we cannot. And then another twist. The accountant, still seated in the gallery, stood abruptly. His face pale, but his voice steady. There is an original will. Every head turned. I was the one asked to file it years ago. But before I could, he pointed directly at my sister, intercepted it. She told me it wasn't necessary, that another version would be presented later. I was afraid to speak, but I kept a copy. From his folder, he withdrew a sealed envelope. The judge's gavel banged. Bailiff, retrieve that at once. The envelope was opened. Inside lay a document, yellowed with age but intact. The handwriting was unmistakable, the signature genuine, the notarization official, and the words clear, to my youngest daughter. I leave controlling interest in the company, with the expectation that she will honor and protect its legacy. The courtroom erupted. Reporters scribbled furiously. Relatives gasped. Employees whispered in disbelief. And my sister. She collapsed into her chair, her mask shattered, her body trembling as the truth swallowed her whole. But Hayden wasn't finished. He turned to the judge, voice steady. Your Honor, we now have clear evidence not only of forgery, but of deliberate suppression of the original will. This is fraud. This is perjury. This is theft. The judge's eyes narrowed. The court will be considering criminal charges. For now, this trial is adjourned until sentencing. The gavel struck. It was over. As we left the courtroom, cameras flashed, reporters screamed questions, and the world seemed to tilt on its axis. I should have felt victory, triumph, relief, But all I felt was exhaustion, because in exposing her, in tearing down her lies, I hadn't just saved the company, I had destroyed my sister. And part of me wondered, had I destroyed myself in the process too? The courthouse was quieter that morning, but the tension was suffocating. Reporters crowded the halls outside, eager for the verdict. Family members shuffled nervously in their seats, whispering, glancing at one another, as if afraid the walls themselves would deliver judgment before the judge did. My sister sat across from me, pale and trembling, her attorney whispering frantically in her ear. I could see the fear etched in her features, the same fear I had sensed months ago, back when this battle had begun. In whispers and shadows, the judge entered, robes flowing, gavel raised. The room fell silent. After careful consideration of the evidence, testimonies and documents presented in this court, the judge began, voice steady and resolute. This court finds that the will presented by the defendant is fraudulent and was deliberately used to misrepresent the intentions of the deceased. The original will, which has now been verified, confirms the controlling interest in the company belongs to the plaintiff. He gestured toward me, the younger daughter. Furthermore, he continued, eyes narrowing slightly, the court notes attempts to suppress evidence and manipulate witnesses. These actions are criminal in nature. Appropriate legal action will follow. A collective gasp filled the courtroom. Some whispered. Others stared in stunned silence. My sister's lips trembled. Her hands gripped the table as if she could anchor herself to something real. The judge banged his gavel again. This session is adjourned. Orders for sentencing and restitution will be communicated in writing. The room emptied slowly. Cameras flashed as I walked out, flanked by Clara and Mr. Hayden. The air outside smelled of rain and asphalt, heavy and cleansing. Reporters shouted questions, but I didn't answer. I barely heard them, because in that moment, I was thinking of my father. His trust. His faith in me when everything around me was crumbling. The fallout was immediate. Relatives called, some with congratulations, some with bitterness. Board members approached, hesitant at first, then with relief finally. Order and legitimacy had returned. Employees whispered thanks, grateful for a leader who truly valued the company's legacy rather than personal gain. My sister, of course, was stripped of power. Legal investigations began. Her influence evaporated like mist under the morning sun. And though part of me felt satisfaction, another part ached. Because victory had a cost. I returned to my father's office, the space that had always felt like his heartbeat. I ran my fingers over the desk, the papers, the files, the letter I had carried through months of uncertainty and fear. He had trusted me, and I had honored that trust, yet the echoes of the battle remained. Family bonds were fractured. A sister I had loved, once my closest companion, now stood across the divide. Some relatives no longer spoke to me. And though the company was safe, the legacy I inherited came with shadows I couldn't ignore. Still, there was hope. I called Clara into my office. The two of us standing quietly amidst the bookshelves, the sunlight streaming through the windows. We did it, she said softly. I nodded. We did. But it wasn't easy. And it's not over, not really. There will be rebuilding, healing, trust to restore. She smiled faintly. You're ready for it. I let myself smile back. Not the triumphant, victorious smile, but the quiet one. The one that carries scars and wisdom, courage and determination. Weeks later, I officially assumed control of the company. The board met with me, loyal employees returned, and business plans moved forward under my guidance. Yet I never forgot the lessons I had learned in this fight. Power can be stolen, but truth always finds a way. Family can betray, but loyalty and courage endure. Legacy isn't just about wealth or control, it's about honor, integrity, and the choices you make when no one is watching. And though the battle was over, the memories lingered. I walked through the halls of the company one evening, alone, listening to the echoes of the past. My father's presence felt near, as if he were watching, proud of the fight I had endured. I touched the contract on my desk, the original one, signed and initialed by him. And I whispered softly, as if he could hear me through the walls of time, "I did it. I protected our legacy. And I'll keep it safe. Always." The city lights glimmered through the windows, reflecting off the polished surfaces, as though the world itself acknowledged the truth that had prevailed. And for the first time in months, I felt a calm I hadn't known since the storm began, because I had claimed not just the company, but my father's trust, his vision, and his belief in me. And nothing, not lies, not betrayal, not greed, could take that away. All right, everyone, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for spending your time with me. If you enjoyed it, feel free to subscribe. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.